Hello and welcome to another episode of 10x Marketer podcast. Are you worried about your website conversion rate? Is there too much focus on the best practices still not getting the results? Maybe blindly copying websites like Amazon, booking.com or any other big portal, creating the urgency rules, showing the timers is actually hurting the business rather than helping it. Today we have none other than Siva Manjunath. He is a seasoned CRO expert, and you can't miss having fun when you have Siva in the episode. So definitely, there's a lot of fun chat around CRO and the best practices, and how Amazonization is going happening and hurting the businesses of all sizes. We discuss best practices. We discuss strategies to implement CRO even for the smallest of the business or the largest of the business, how to use CRO best practices in the right manner, what are the practical strategies to get started with CRO, also what are the tools or technologies you can use to implement CRO without burning a big hole in your pocket. So these are some of the things that we discuss, and this is definitely going to be an episode worth listening. Before we dive into the episode and listen to Siva and what he has to share, can I request you one thing? Have you subscribed to the 10x Marketer podcast on your favorite channel? We broadcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube channel. So wherever you're listening from, make sure you subscribe before we jump into the episode so that you get an update about future episodes. Welcome to the 10x Marketer podcast. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself to my audience and then let's get into the episode.
You said quickly, so I'm going to say podcast host of an experimentation podcast and optimization person, optimization product owner at Motive. That was quick.
Great. So that's quick and very easy. I'm sure you have practiced it a lot. Now, I have been following you as an optimization person or somebody who is like must be followed for CRO. What is your initial thought in current D2C scenario where industry is going and how CRO is adopted among D2C brands, bigger or smaller, so startups?
Yeah, I think the trend is like with Google Optimize being sunset, which was a free tool that basically everyone had access to, mostly everyone through having Google Analytics. When I originally saw Google Analytics being sunset, I was like, okay, it looks like the floor will reduce and there will be more people doing higher level experimentation in CRO, and we'll drop the floor out and the average will go up. But I think what ended up happening was more people were like, all right, fuck optimization, fuck A/B testing. I have to pay $100 a month for a tool. I don't want to pay money. I just want to make money, which is stupid. It's weird that optimization and CRO falls under that microscope, but people will throw hundreds of thousands of dollars into paid search ads, but not optimize the traffic going to that page. I'm already getting unhinged. Anyway, on that note, what I've seen more is people sacrificing CRO and optimization in favor of tactics they believe are more proven and tried and true. But like,
Something like the best practices as we know them.
yeah, I mean, like, I think if you go on LinkedIn and you just try and search CRO, you'll probably get like 50, 60% of it, like comment checklist to get this checklist of CRO best practices, things to do. And it, like, as a person who's run all of the tests on these things, man, it's like sometimes they work, but sometimes they don't. And that's where I just have such an issue with the verbiage. But if you just reword them to like common practices or things you should probably do, like I'm generally cool with the idea. A lot of these checklists are like make it easy to buy, have guest checkout and stuff like that, which in most cases generally makes sense. Although you could argue things like, well, if you have guest checkout, maybe you lose access to first party data. That's why like some certain things that are considered best practice aren't really best practice. But I think what we're ending up doing is we're creating a bifurcation around, I guess, the CRO and this conversion rate optimization mindset of people who are very data driven and like booking.coms and people in the upper echelon who are really good at it and it's ingrained in their mindset. And then there's people who are like just rolling out, just trying to sell something online, just trying to have something that's functional, pulling shell templates off the shelf for like from like Shopify, or trying to just copy what Amazon does. And like, while it can work and it probably will allow people to it'll allow people to transact, it's a low bar, and it's like it's a, I guess it's a low bar and it's a low ceiling. Um, I don't know. It's like if you go to the gym and you lift 2 pound weights, like you're going to the gym and you're doing a workout, you might have a bead of sweat, but like you could do so much better.
True. And you brought in an interesting point. One is the Shopify templates, which is like the default go to settings for most D2C brands. And then also Amazon. So, one thing people don't realize when they do all these, like, I won't call them the stupid thing, but the basic things is that
We'll say low
these big,
maturity. We'll
yeah,
keep it like tame.
these big brand like Amazon or Booking.com, they have a lot of money to spend on the CRO part, and whatever best practices are their best practices, there's a lot of data to back
100%.
that best practices for them.
100%.
Now if you simply copy just by looking at the front screen, like they have introduced this button, let me copy it and put it on my website, you don't know anything about what happened in the back end when the button finally came here. What
Yep.
was the maybe they are running an experiment and you don't know that. You just simply see the button and you copy it and put it on your website, and also build a LinkedIn post saying that I have discovered a best practice, comment now so that I can share it with you.
Yeah.
uh, Even that portal which initially brought in that experiment might just drop it because it's not successful them for them, but it becomes a universal best practice somewhere else because it was copied from them. uh,
Can I share an example?
yeah, sure,
So,
I'd
so
love
one
to.
example would be like, I've seen this a lot where there's like the countdown timer. Like, oh, only 10 minutes to go until this deal expires or whatever. How many have you? I don't know if they do this in India. They do this a lot in the US, or they used to, like the as seen on TV ads where it's like, buy the next 10 minutes and we'll throw in a free whatever bullshit thing. And it's like, no, no one genuinely believes it's a 10-minute timer as counting down. But it's a thing that people have just always persistently used. Have they ever actually tested it? Probably not, because they're just seeing that everyone else does it, or they're copying what the template of what everyone else has done. Have you ever been convinced by a timer that's like, call in the next 10 minutes? Otherwise, no, of course not.
So I think two things really. I won't use the word on the my podcast at least, but two things that people really ruined in a way. One
Hmm.
is the urgency factor, and second is the pricing model. So today only I was talking to my wife, and she was referring to something like, why is it 1799? Why it can't be 1800? Everybody knows that it's 1800, right? So it's so generalized, so overused that it's kind of not useful at all. One, and second, this urgency factor, you see it everywhere, and you just laugh at it. And
Yeah.
sometimes it is used in such a way, even for a digital product, that you come next day, you see the same timer 10 minutes. So how do you trust a D2C brand? And does the brand manager or the people who are running this kind of ad, do they even realize that it's actually losing the trust of customer rather than creating a real urgency and selling it to them, which is kind of an unfortunate thing, but it is one of the best practices copied from big brands.
I think taking a step back with all this, it doesn't mean that certain tactics may or may not work. Like if you go to booking.com, they might have a countdown timer. Like Ticketmaster uses a countdown timer. I think there are other reasons why they use a countdown timer, but I'm sure part of it is psychology based, especially like if tickets are selling fast. Like that literally could be a thing, right?
No, it is true for some brand. It's not universally unacceptable practice. It is true for many brands, but kind of everybody copying it, especially people who are selling these coaching programs, which is like there's no limit on inventory. They can have 100 people and they don't shy about it. Still, they say that only three seats are left, two seats are left. And when finally you go into their program, there are only five people. So I
Yeah.
don't know which seats were left.
Yeah.
because maybe they were the only seat which actually filled up.
The analogy I'd use here is like, would you rather take a multivitamin or would you rather have blood work done and figure out exactly what vitamins and minerals and whatever stuff you need for your body? Yeah, the blood work costs more money, but at the end of the day, if you just take multivitamins, it's just making your pee more expensive in many cases versus, and it's a spray all, pray all versus a targeted approach of identify problems or challenges or things that your body is doing too much of or not enough of, and then supplement and make that better. And I think that's where I go with CRO is more of like a mindset rather than a tactic because like there are things tactics you could do like A/B testing is a tactic, research is a tactic, talking to your users, looking at your analytics data is effectively the process and mindset of CRO, which I'm sure you've done plenty of. You've looked at analytics. I would consider you a CRO because
Yeah,
that's optimizing for conversion with a data source being analytics, which is a as long as your analytics works, is a highly like it's a high form of evidence towards making a decision versus just guessing, right?
true. And I think I also want to step back and bring back the topic of Amazonization, that the word that we discovered during our last discussion.
Yeah.
uh, how do you really fight this as a brand? Because one, if you see anything on Amazon, look like this is the new convention that everyone has to adopt, or the best practice that everyone has to adopt. So you as a CRO or the marketing person, you have to fight with the other teams who are kind of very convinced that if Amazon is doing that, you should also do that, or the general marketing standard. How do you really go about convincing that this needs to be tested? We can't simply put it on our website.
So to be clear, when we say, at least when I say test, I don't explicitly mean A/B test. It could be validate. It
Hmm.
could be a pre and post, which is a lower form of evidence or lower quality form of evidence, but evidence is still evidence, and it's all about risk tolerance. So, like again, analytics data is a very high quality form of data. That being said, it doesn't always indicate exactly why. It's more of the what's happening to help you narrow it in, which is why you talk to your users, analytics, qualitative data. Like if you take a bunch of sources to help you hone in on exactly how to solution. But the challenge you're always going to hit with competing with Amazon is if you just copy Amazon or you just do what they're doing, you're going to lose to Amazon because they're just always going to be cheaper than you or they're going to be better than you. And that like unless you've somehow solved for something that Amazon isn't doing, or you're selling like a magic pill that literally does the best things in the world, then the motivation for your product will over like if you think of the math problem, I forget the math problem, but it's like motivation like plus friction, or I guess motivation minus friction equals intent to buy. I don't know. I'll have to figure out like what the math problem is. But effectively, motivation is incredibly important to determining whether you want to buy something. Let me ask
Yeah,
you
and
this.
if you have that kind of magic feel, you don't need to copy Amazon. You can simply put it on a white WordPress and it will still sell.
You could ask me to like send you something through carrier pigeon, and if I'm motivated enough, I'll do it. Like
Yeah,
if I had I always use this example. I think I stole this from Pep, so shout out Pep. But like if I asked you to fill out a 100-page questionnaire and you got a free Tesla at the end of that, not, I think 100 people out of 100 people would do that, right?
yeah,
Versus if I asked you to fill out a 100-page questionnaire to get access to like this shitty white paper, you'd be like, no, I'm good. And it's the motivation. The motivation, the cheese at the end of the maze is what gets you to that. So if all you're doing is copying what Amazon does, even if it's just a light skin, like a reskin of the page or their templates or whatever, the motivation to buy from Amazon is going to come from the pricing differentiation. That is going to be cheaper and probably faster to ship through them. And it's consistent. They have one click shop. Like they made it super easy. So you're not going to, like, if you can compete with that, cool. But I doubt you'll be able to compete with that. So that's where you have to differentiate in other ways.
yeah. And you brought in a very good context, and I would like to connect it to another example. Most government website across all the countries, they have the like worst possible design. They make it very difficult to even fill up the form. And
Which
still,
sorry, which
if
sites?
government websites,
I don't know what that is.
any department website, government
Oh, I
department
see.
website, yeah.
Got it,
So
got it.
in India, it's very typical. Like we have a railway website, which is like kind of impossible to book a ticket. Still people figure out some way, because that is something that they need. So when they really need it, you don't need to optimize it for anything. If you have
Yeah.
something like that, you don't have to work on the optimization part. Your product is super solid. It is anyway, people are gonna buy it. What you really need, like want to make it super easy, is when it's an impulse purchase.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess the price is going to be a very important factor in how you
Hmm.
choose to like optimize your site. It's the same thing. Like, I recorded an episode on my podcast with Carlos. Like, how much is B2B versus B2C optimization truly different? There's some nuances, but honestly, I think the process, generally speaking, is the same. It's just how you actually action those is different. So, like, is the process for booking a $4,000 cruise similar to like shopping for a very expensive software with your integrations? You're still going to have to conduct research. You're not going to impulse buy. You probably have to go through approvals, whether it's B2B, you have to get approvals from your company. If it's B2C, you have to get approvals from your wife, right? Like, or your accountant or whoever. Like, so there's going to be similarities in how you approach it. I think price is going to be a pretty major one. Um, yeah, you're right. Like impulse purchases.
Yep.
No,
One factor is price, and second factor is like how dearly you really need that product. If you really need it, then you will anyway figure out how to buy it. So that's not the CRO problem. CRO problem is when you actually have to convince people to buy, and you actually have to make it easy for people to buy. That's where the application of CRO would be something that bring you great results.
exclusivity is another one too. So like
Yeah.
I'll quickly run through this story. I'm a pretty big like vinyl connoisseur now, and with certain records being released, I like to get the unique variant of it, and sometimes only certain shops or sites will sell it. I suffered through like the worst fucking experience trying to buy this one vinyl, and I'm like, because I can't buy it anywhere else, I'm going to suffer through this. So like it's almost counterintuitive, but like if you have such a unique product, I don't know if you necessarily need to care that much about optimization, at least in the short term, if your product is so good. But I think most people are in the camp of no, our product is not unique. It's not so incredibly high in terms of motivation that yes, you actually do have to pay attention because like if I could buy that same vinyl on Amazon versus this one unique shop that sucks and it's the same price on Amazon 10 times out of 10 times.
True. And I have another story that's kind of a similar context. Since you shared a story, let me also share that.
It's
It's
story
story
time.
about buying this mic, AstraZeneca mic. So I purchased one from Amazon, like made the purchase. The supplier sent me some cheap Chinese version, which is not AstraZeneca, of course.
So it
I
was
had
fake,
to,
right?
yeah, I have to raise the fraud complaint and report back to the supplier. Now, I found this mic. I searched on Google, and there's only one source, a local shop in Bangalore, that was selling the same mic. I looked at their reviews and everything. It was completely something to not convince me that I need to get from this shop. But that was the only option at that moment to get an AstraZeneca mic in India. So finally, I called that person before putting an order. I called them on the landline number of their shop, and I said, I need to buy this, but I see there are a lot of negative reviews about you. Will you really send me the product? He said, definitely, I'll send you the product. It's about the experience of other people. I can't control, but right now I'm very convinced that I'll send you the product. I had to go through a lot of steps to finally put an order on that website, but because I needed it so urgently, I had to record an episode next week. So
Yeah.
anyway, I did everything that was in my like possible limits to get this mic. So
Motivation is the
yeah,
driving force. Like
true.
that's what's going to help you differentiate. And I think that's important in the CRO process or the mindset. like CRO isn't, as much as I test button colors, it's not always exclusively about testing button colors. It's a joke. I don't test a lot of button colors. It's a joke, sure. But
Sure.
it can be important. It can be important to like test for contrast and accessibility, and it could have minor impacts. I'm not downplaying the impact of button color testing, but for like the most tests that are most interesting, and that's where you have to have that CRO mindset, is this motivation. So it's not the green, how much is a green CTA versus a red CTA going to increase motivation? Subconsciously, maybe some people, like maybe, and maybe there's the psychology to it, perhaps. A sticky CTA versus not. If I don't give a shit about buying it, making the CTA sticky and being annoying as it can convince me. If you're in like a store shopping for furniture and that one sales dude just keeps on following you around like a sticky CTA, that's not convincing me. Like, all right, I'll just drop $3,000 on the sofa because this guy's, no, you're not going to buy it. So,
True.
what is the thing that motivates you? Well, tell me about the sofa. Is it like super easy to clean? Wait, but other sofas aren't super easy to clean. So how like it always goes down to like what are the problems that users face and solve for those problems. And that's where I used to dog on copy testing way back in the day, but copy testing is so important to motivation, which is so important to that true process of optimizing for conversions. And it's so easy to test and do that stuff too.
True. So let's say everyone who is listening to us so far is convinced that CRO is something that they have to implement and do not follow the Shopify templates or Amazon or Booking.com
Let me put
blindly.
an asterisk there real quick. Like if you're just starting off and you have a base template, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just use Shopify templates. I think that's fine. If you need something to allow people to transact on your site, it's fine. Just know that that's a low ceiling and you can do better. I promise you, you could do better than a Shopify template, but it's okay to start. And we all got to start somewhere. That's fine.
Yes. So let's say he or she has started, they have done certain transactions already. They're convinced that their product is good and they have to start the CRO somewhere. What is their starting point? What they initially can do without hiring a professional team or without hiring somebody like you? What kind of CRO a normal D2C person who is just a brand guy or a product guy, not really into marketing, not really into technology? What is the starting point for them?
I would hope that
Mm-hmm.
the start of their journey in building a Shopify site and stuff and the start of building their own product that they're going to sell involves talking to people and talking
Mm-hmm.
to potential prospects and like doing your own form of customer research. Like, are you building something that people actually care about? Because the most optimized website isn't going to matter if your product sucks as a whole, right? So that's its own, like, I guess that's the start. Like P0 is make sure you have something kind of worth selling and differentiating.
True.
But if assuming that's the case, you've already talked to customers. You're already doing CRO. That's the mindset piece. That's why, like tactically, yeah, you could run A/B tests. You could look at research. You could look at heat maps, session recordings, qualitative data, quantitative data. Like I'm just rattling off things you could do on your own. It's just look at the data and try and make decisions based on the data that you see. So that's like those are some tactics. I'd say like if you're so new into the space and you're just trying to dip your feet, have analytics working, like a functional site analytics with like funnels. If you're an ecom, especially, make sure you have like funnels. So you look at how many people get to a product page, who add to cart and checkout, have funnels, and then figure out what are major drop off points. Potentially segment, like if you have multiple products or different versions of products, use that data to inform on like, well, if you have I don't know, I'm just trying to think like, let's just use like knives, for example. You have like variant A of a knife that's super sharp and has a super cool design and it's more expensive than the other one. Look at your analytics data, look at your bot purchase data and figure out what is working, what's not. Figure out choke points in your analytics. Like to me, that's table stakes, but that's getting your toe wet into or feet wet into like actually doing optimization. So I'd say like start with that.
Great. And then how to avoid following the best practices?
Just stop following them. Like just don't implement stuff without um some form of validation. So doesn't necessarily mean don't test quote unquote best practices because people have had success. My issue with the best practices and these checklist things is basically they're saying, oh, booking.com has a timer and it worked for booking.com. Therefore, it will work for you because it's the best practice. And it's like, I sell like $5,000 jewelry on my site. A timer isn't going to convince someone to spend $5,000. It might. I mean, shit, it might. But you should validate it in some way. Logically, I wouldn't guess it did. But that's why, again, like these best practices are things that maybe there's some logic to it, but try and validate. And if you don't have enough traffic to A/B test, and I'm happy to like nerd out on exactly how to calculate that, or feel free to for anyone to reach out to me. Like I don't understand how to like calculate if I have enough traffic to test. I'm happy to talk to you guys about that. But even if you don't have enough traffic to run a true A/B split test, pre and post tests, which means like publish the thing and then look at your analytics data after and before. It's not the best, highest quality of evidence, but it's still better than not. It has noise, but that's at least again, you're in the mindset of trying to validate your choices. And if published change number goes up, cool, and try and do more of that kind of stuff. You know.
So, is there any benchmark on like traffic numbers to start in an A/B test, or there's no
I
universal
think there's
benchmark like
some
that?
going rate numbers of like some folks at the very top are like have 200,000 sessions with 5% MDE, which is like run tests that will have a lift of 5% or more. I think that's too high. That being the
Mhm.
case, like 200, it would be great if we all could have 200,000 sessions a month and a bunch of conversions related to that. I think the reality is most of us don't have that. So when it comes to pure A/B testing, I'll say if you have less than that number, test bigger things. Test things that are more disruptive, that have more eyeballs, that change a concept very differently. Doesn't mean do whole scale redesigns because those can be expensive as well, but like try and test bigger changes versus if you have 50 conversions a month in like 4,000 sessions, don't test button colors because you're probably not going to be able to detect it, stuff like that.
True. So you talked about bigger changes, and of course that are expensive. When do you? How do you define the bigger change? Really, like, is it completely? You said don't redesign because that's a biggest change you can do. Uh, do you really update the entire copy of the page? Is it the product images? Is it the whole of it, including the product images? What is the like? How do you define the biggest change in a way?
It's subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Big is in the eye of the beholder. um if I had to give some guidelines, like if you so like let's say you have a product page, let's just use
Mm-hmm.
ecom as an example, and let's just say you have a product page. Um, what I would consider big are like redesigning the buy box,
Mm-hmm.
adding additional copy that's more visible. Like bigger also means visibility, which means try and test more stuff above the fold. Because if you're testing something at the very bottom of the product page, most heat maps, you're not going to see most people scroll to the bottom of the page in most cases. Maybe yours is different, but in most cases, most people won't scroll. So you're taking a fraction of people who make it to the product page, and then you're taking a fraction of that fraction of people who make it to that part of the page, and then you're splitting that in half for control versus test. So like it's like increasing the visibility. So homepage testing is great because that's where a lot of traffic tends to go. um
Above
Also,
the
I'd be
fold pages, home
above
page,
the fold is always
buy
ideally
box
better,
changes,
but
buy
also
box
be
changes.
careful about stuffing a bunch of shit above the fold. I feel like there's a tendency for people to like everyone sees it above the fold, yeah, but when you add everything above the fold, you have no clarity or anything above the fold. So like be careful about that too.
Yeah.
Um Even like what do you think? I look at Amazon's product pages and they're functional and we're used to it, but they don't ever feel optimized. They feel cluttered. Like half the time in my widescreen monitor, like shit's cut off. But again, their angle is the motivation side of cheaper and faster. So There's this example I remember. I think it was Craigslist. Craigslist did, and I'm sure you guys will remember like Craigslist site. The UI is like sucks. It's so bad from just a like I look at it and it looks bad perspective. It's subjective, but I'm sure you would agree with that sentiment. I think they did a redesign a while ago. I don't remember the exact dates, but they tried a redesign and there were so many people who were like, "I hate this." And it got cleaner. It like it made more intuitive sense, but people were so used to the old design that they're like, "We don't like this new thing." So
Yeah, I don't
it's
know where to
bad and
go.
it tanked. And then they went back to their old shitty design.
Yeah, so I think Amazon is more like a cheap vegetable market rather than an optimized website. So if you're copying from there, you're not really copying something really good. And the real motivation for people coming on Amazon and buying is the product, like product prices and the delivery guarantee that they provide, rather than the fully optimized page. Because if you look at any Amazon product page, it's not optimized at all from any angle. It's just
Can
like,
I ask you a question? Like when you go to Amazon, like what is your decision criteria for saying like I will go search for something on Amazon versus search for something in Google for like a product?
so it's mostly when you look at something that you need on a day to day basis, like a cheaper product or a discounted one. You have the whole inventory in front of you. You can just decide which one to buy, and that's the motivation I have. And mostly those are the kind of products or purchases I make on Amazon. I don't buy expensive stuff which is like really costly. I would maybe touch it and buy it. I'm still that kind of person.
By the
But
way, I just did CRO. Like I just did it. That's CRO, guys. This is just so easy. Just ask someone, right? Like
yeah,
ask your customers, ask your users. That's CRO. That's so easy,
true.
and that was free, right?
That's awesome, and I'm sure you are the CRO guy, so you know how to initiate and where to start
Better
from.
than Rishi.
Yeah, let's not
I
talk
know.
about that.
I had to squeeze in one.
Maybe you guys should have a match, like some
There's
boxing
no
match or
match. There's
something.
no competition. I am the best, Rishi. I
No,
am the
you can
best.
have something like a boxing tournament.
He's tall in real life. Have you seen him in real life? He's so tall.
No, I haven't seen it. Maybe you have
Okay.
seen it.
Anyway,
You
he
can,
probably
next
beat me
time
up.
you meet, you can have say wrestling or a boxing match just to see.
Yeah.
Uh, let's put the jokes apart. Now we talked about the analytics, like the traffic numbers. We talked about where to get started, and of course talking to your customer is very important and getting the feedback. So even if you're not able to do CRO from the CRO definition, you can still go and talk to the people who are buying from you and understand their motivation, and maybe that will help you more in the initial optimization rather than just simply looking at the plain data, which is not big enough for you to make any decision or building any hypothesis. That's a very good point you brought in. Now coming to the like we talked about best practices, and you made anti best practices points very well. Then pros and cons of using the templates, we talked about that. Then Amazon and Shopify, we have been bitching since the beginning about both
Yeah.
of them. Now let's say, especially for a B2B brand, one, what are the traffic numbers that they should consider, that yes, now we are in a good shape to go for a CRO? And second is, people are building a lot of webinars and other stuff to sell the products or maybe get people into the buying mode. So how do you really define the customer journey and put CRO into it, both in a B2B or D2C perspective?
I'll not so subtly plug the episode that me and Carlos did around like B2B versus B2C optimization. We go into pretty in depth, like what's the process differences between them. To be honest, like again, I don't think there's that many. At least I and Carlos came to the conclusion that the differences are not that much.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes just in the tactical execution. Like instead of contact sales form on a website, it's add to cart and purchase. One of the major differences might be, and I like clipped this out for myself, like one of the only major differences might be I'm spending my own personal money in B2C versus I'm spending my company's money in B2B. And like, I care more about my money than my company's money. Sorry. sorry, but like that's true. Like it's objectively true.
Uh,
Um,
Not entirely. I mean, spending your company's money can cost you job, right? Without making right decision, if you end up spending the money.
I guess,
That
so like that's fair. I guess it's not objective for me. It's objectively true, but like I will care. I will look at my budget because it literally affects my ability to eat. Like I don't know, spending my company's money. If I spent an extra $1,000 on a tool that I thought was better or worse or whatever, like it doesn't affect my ability to put food on the table. Like literally put the food, go to the market, buy the food. Again, like it's more of a joke than anything else, but
true. So you brought in the tools, and that's an important context for any CRO. And do you think there is any free tool that can help you get started at all? There is anything like, we know something like Microsoft Clarity, Google Optimize is no more there. Is there any other tool people can get started with?
I think Clarity is a great free tool. I mean, I guess you have to know it's a Microsoft company, so I'm sure there's some AI modeling and stuff. Like it's a free product, but nothing's ever free. So as long as your legal team and whatever's cool with it, it does have a lot of value for your company to look at heat maps and session recordings. Just make sure you set it up properly. Um, but knowing where, like, you might think something's incredibly important on your site, on your homepage, for example, you're like, oh, this customer testimonial section so impactful. And you look at the heat maps and it's like 7% of people made it to this section. So you're like,
Yep,
okay, it might be important to those 7%, but to the 93%, it's definitely not. So
they're
like
not even
that's where
looking at it.
yeah, exactly right. So it can't be important because they never saw it. So it could be important, and you say, all right, well, let's move it up, and that's its own tester. That's a thing we do, and then just do a
Hmm.
pre and post analysis.
Sure.
So I know you're talking about tools. Like, I think that's a great free tool. The thing I'll say is like there are some tools like A/B testing tools, and like I don't want to plug specific names because I don't endorse any specific public tools, but there are tools that are cheaper than others that will allow you to run A/B tests or do other things. And there's Shopify. If you're on Shopify, I think there's some Shopify. I'm not a Shopify nerd, so I don't know all the nitty gritty stuff there, but I know there are A/B testing tools baked in that will allow you to actually do pretty easy tests there. I'll do another subtle plug. Me and Kelly Wortham did like a run your first A/B test. So if you're scared of running your first A/B test, we were all there. Things that are easier like run a copy test, run a button color test. Like these are easy to run tests. Get it going. That's again like it's okay if you go to the gym and you lift the 2 pound dumbbell and you start with that. It's okay if you just go to the gym. You physically walk into the gym and then you just leave because you have started to make progress towards building the ritual and the activity. And you only get better by doing it over and over and over and over again. So if you run your first test and it sucks, or it's a button color test or an AA test, which means basically just validate that your data like looks good and your stuff's randomizing. So like I know I'm like nitty gritty and the tactical stuff. As far as tools go, there are plenty of tools that will allow you to start that process of A/B testing. There's user testing and other tools. Again, I don't endorse them, but there are other tools like that where they just allow you to talk to people. Honestly, like if you have purchases from people on your site, just email them. Be like, we'll give you a $50 gift card if you give us your honest thoughts. Like that's easy. And that's someone who literally put through your perhaps potentially not great website. They were extremely
Yep.
motivated. So what's making them tick? Those are the
True.
people you want. And then, you can also have abandoned cart emails and surveys and stuff. Like there's a bunch of templates and stuff that allow you to do that. So I feel like there is no shortage of ability for you to do activities and rituals for you to actually get in the mindset of the CRO. In many
Hmm.
cases, it's like I get that it could be intimidating, but
True.
you got to start somewhere and like just start. Just look at your analytics. Just talk to your customers. That's such an easy way for you to get curious, get interested, and like almost get red pilled into that CRO mindset. And once you're there, you'll never not look at a site the same way.
True. So it was a fantastic chat. Do you want to add anything before we close it, or is it like I'm doing it at abrupt and or you
I've
still?
already plugged 2 of my episodes, so I'm good on the plugs.
I'll mention both of them in the description. Don't worry about that. I mean, that's definitely a value add for people who are listening to my podcast as well. So, thank you so much for joining, and it was a fun chat. Uh,
Thank
we'll
you so much for
love
having
to
me.
have you again whenever it's
Yeah, for
possible.
sure.
And thank you
Yeah,
so
and feel
much,
free to
guys,
DM me.
listening to me and Siva so far. We really love talking to each other, and I'm sure you enjoyed the episode and you're getting started with CRO. Make sure you follow, subscribe to the 10x Marketer podcast wherever you're listening from. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye.
Take care.